All right, I think we'll kick off, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another webinar by Awqaf Australia. And we've got a special guest with us, Brother Almir Colan as well, founder of Muslim Money Matters, and also one of our investment committee board members as well. And so I will basically run through a couple of slides first, and then inshallah we'll have some open conversation with myself and Brother Almir. And then inshallah, when we finish the presentation, we'll have some questions and answers as well. So with that, let's go. Bismillah. Now, you might have heard the Waqf model or Awqaf or Waqfs in general. You might have heard of them in history. And so before we even get into what is the modern, the era of Muslim capital, I want to talk about a couple of examples from history, inshallah. So let's go back in time, inshallah. So there's a couple that I'm going to just highlight, but I'm not going to spend too much time on them as well. The first is there's a couple on screen you can have a read off, but the gardens of Uthman radiallahu anhu, the Waqf of Zubaydah, the Waqf of Fatima al-Fahri, and a few others as well. And I think the question I'm going to try to pose to you is that have you heard about these Waqfs? Have you heard about the impact they've had? And hopefully some of you might have heard about them or have heard about how the impact has come throughout history and throughout time. And I might just quickly just touch on actually, I might touch on the gardens of Uthman radiallahu anhu. Now, the story behind that is the well of Ruma in Medina was a well that was sought after when the Muslims had migrated into the Hijrah had taken place. A lot of Muslims were coming into Medina, and essentially the well of Ruma was bought by Hazrat Uthman radiallahu anhu. And long story short, 1400 years later, that well has produced so much wealth that essentially now we're looking at multi-property estates. We're looking at continuous income flow just from the sale of just from the returns from that well. And that's just an example that essentially has turned one well that was for the purpose of helping the Muslim community into something that's been it's everlasting. Essentially, it's continuing to produce wealth, and the benefits and the sanat that go with that is extraordinary. Now, other ones you might have heard of, maybe Al Azhar University is another one, another Waqf for education, and something that has built some of the best mashaykhs and the best reciters of Quran. Again, a Waqf given for the purposes of our community. And also, I might just comment on the Indian Awqaf as well. So in India, the third largest landowner is the Indian Awqaf, the institution that manages these Waqfs in India. And so you talk about the impact of what is a Waqf and how it has power over and strength to our community. And I'll tell you a bit more about what a Waqf is, and so you can understand what I'm talking about here. So what is a Waqf? I might just talk about that and let's break it down for a second. A Waqf is an Islamic endowment in which property or assets such as land, which is the store, buildings, or even money is dedicated to a specific charitable purpose, and it can't be sold, inherited, or transferred. The other elements are the income generated from that Waqf asset or property is used to support charitable causes like education, healthcare, poverty relief, etc. Now, there's a lot of words there, but what does that actually mean practically? And I'll give you an example of a cash Waqf. So imagine you give a donation with a specific charitable purpose, be it helping the orphans in your area. Now, what happens is that donation is then invested with fund managers or third-party wealth managers. And essentially, once that initial donation has grown in size, the returns are put into two kind of buckets. The first is that it gets added back into the original donation. And the second is that it gets used, the remaining part gets used for the charitable purpose. So essentially, in a nutshell, this is the Waqf model, where you have donations that essentially continue to keep earning and keep accumulating more wealth on top. And essentially, you're not in a situation where you're constantly asking for more money because the initial money is continuing to produce more. So imagine a tree or a trunk that has many leaves and it keeps sprouting more leaves. And you can keep using the leaves because the trunk or the main tree is still there. Now, the next the next slide is a bit high level, but basically the idea is, imagine our community, a Muslim community, with a Waqf system and one without one. And when we talk about a Waqf system, we're talking about institutional, real assets in our community. So what happens is that we move away from the sense of reliance on government grants, reliance on third parties to help support our community's endeavors and what we want to achieve. The second is a stronger identity. We get to a point where we're no longer, we have a very clear identity. We're not, a weak organization. When we talk about Muslims in the general space, we have a real identity because we have infrastructure. We have things that support us. We are one unit, one ummah. The next is a very important one, which is around donor fatigue. We've all heard everyone ask for donations at masjids, and other places to help support the causes that we are really passionate about. But what happens is that it leads to donor fatigue. You've paid once, you've paid the second time, you paid the third time. And over time, what happens is you feel, sorry if I can get people not to write on the screen. You feel that, it gets to a point where it's really hard to continue to ask the same people over and over again. With the Waqf model, it is self-reliant, self-sufficient. So it helps you better structure your giving. So you can really structure it and go, okay, this is going to be put aside for a set purpose, and it's going to continue to be there for that purpose. Another element is better compliance. Reactive spending is what is reactive spending? I'll just take a pause there. Reactive spending is when you have the cash, you want to put it towards charity, you just don't know which one's going to have the most impact. Which charity today is going to have the most impact on, let's say, orphans? So with a Waqf system, you have a better compliance framework. You have philanthropy committees that are set up and monitoring the market to understand if we want to make impact in orphans, we're going to be researching the best other charities that are making effort in that space. Or it could be other things that, that are specific to that cause that you're passionate about, but they're doing the hard yards. So you're planning ahead on where it should be spent. And overall, you have a better, prosperous community as a result. Now, with that, I'm going to just give you two quick examples before we get into the conversation, inshallah. The first is, imagine you have a family Waqf, something that your family is very passionate about, maybe 5 or 6 causes. And essentially, those causes are close to you, and you give $10,000 initially. Now, the $10,000 in the first year, and then 5,000 additional top up in the second year. So you've given 15,000, and you don't give a cent after that. That's all you do. So 15,000 upfront is all you've given in the first 2 years, and you've said, I'm passionate about 3 things: Islamic education, orphans, and maybe helping the homeless. Now, over 100 years, a Waqf model makes that 15,000 worth over 400,000. With the true impact of the grants given out, the grants being the money used for the purposes, over 243,000 from the original 15,000. You haven't added a single cent since the original amount. So you can see the real power of a Waqf model here. You're not just spending 15,000 on a one-off charity, and it's used and consumed and for a great cause, of course. But you're talking about building infrastructure that continues to give for the purposes that you want for into the future. Now, this is a family example. You can also think about business examples. So if you have a business, etc., the same thing happens in a business example. But now imagine they gave 50,000 upfront, and then the second year they gave another 50,000, so 100,000 in total. The true impact over 100 years is close to 6.4 million from that same 100,000 upfront. Because as the money continues to get invested and grow, part of it gets added back in, and part of it goes out through these grants. You can see these grants here. So every year, this much is available to be used for that purpose. And so throughout this time, you can see about $3.8 million worth of real impact going to the causes that will be behind these Waqfs. Now that I've had a quick crash course in what a Waqf model is and how it looks like, I would love to bring in Brother Almir Colan for his opinion and just a discussion on a couple of things, inshallah.
Thank you very much, Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think the first question I have, and I've just put it on the screen so everyone kind of is aligned to what we're talking about, is when we talk about the Waqf model, how does it really differ from any classic endowment or conventional endowment you see with other institutions, and what's our unique value here?
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulna. So thank you very much again for inviting me. It's my pleasure really to be with you all. And Awqaf Australia really is one of the prime examples of very innovative approach to institutionalize a sunnah and the timeless principles that we have in our deen. Regarding the Waqf structure, how it differentiates maybe with the rest of the endowment structures that we have, both aim to build a better world. There is always motivation to do something. Now, where this starts to differentiate in terms of the worldview and therefore the impact and the larger strategy at play comes at the root of how we see world around us. What is it that we are trying to build? So if we look at the world through Islamic lens, there is a specific Islamic economic framework. It centers communities in the middle of it. And
I don't know.
A self-managed community. It's a place which you could think is the basic unit of urban life. So it's a place where you live normally, your daily needs are taken care of. It also acts as a moral sort of compass. And it is a community center for the solidarity through which it organizes its daily work. Now, as a system, Waqf is the part of the broader Islamic economic system. When we look at just financially, there are a number of the ways that Islam legislates how the money circulates in economy. So you have categories of zakat, that is the pillar of our deen, that prescribes specific amount for specific categories. It does target specific groups. Then you have a broad charity. Then you have even the things like interest-free loans that circulates, even how Islam breaks the wealth through the inheritance system. It all is designed to circulate in the community. Now, in the past, we have seen that Waqf was usually in the domain of the elites, in the domain of high net worth individuals. They used to leave something to empower and strengthen the community. Now, in those communities, one of the high-level principles or the benefit was that these kind of open charity within a community would incentivize cooperation by placing value on the generosity and building these relationships. So whether you go to the market or how we treat a neighbor or what are the rules, you will see here that there is very strong emphasis on building relationship between people. So even you shouldn't backbite. You should smile, that is charity. Let alone not cheat in a business, put a framework around these kinds of things. So these tools that we have, they are trying to consolidate the community. Versus what we see, for example, today, even when you have certain endowment, what it's trying to do on the larger scale, what value is represent, where it is landing. It's landing on a fragmented society where everybody is basically living around mobile phone or AI bots and so on. So Islam wants to place this financial architecture, particularly Waqf, in a very middle of it. And so that's why you will see when you look at how these Waqf started. It's usually started, like if I look at Sarajevo, how it started, the whole town started through it. It is when the mosque was built as a Waqf. And around that mosque, there was another Waqf that was built, which is your shops, usually starts with the market, which we call bazaar. So if you go to Bosnia, you will see Emperor's Mosque, first mosque. Around it is Basharshia, which has the schools, library, market, and you immediately start seeing the life around it. Community starts circling, then people start living and so on. So here we see that this kind of a public good is then run by the local people. That's a very important thing. This concept of mahala, this organized community, would run these things for the public good. Now compare that today to most of our products and services, where they come from. They usually come from either big government that is trying to solve certain problems, whether it's in a health or so and so on, or it's from big corporations. We are losing individuals. We are using nuances. We are using that connection with the human. We are more and more dehumanizing everything. Everything is on the button. We live around the screens. We live disconnected. And this is not something that is conducive to the well-being of society. So on the larger scale, we see that through Waqf, we see empowerment of the community, we see incentivization of cooperation. So whether you are supporting, as we see, building a local school or a hospital or a road or agricultural land, all of that is to put community together, to provide for them. And so this is one of the key objectives of Waqf, if you want to compare it to the other endowments. And those other endowments will have their own vision that will come from the root, what they believe, how they see. And unfortunately, we live, as I mentioned, in capitalistic, very reductionist worldview that usually see these things through very limited lens of just material or similar kind of a worldview. Now, I'll give you one very specific example where this faith integrates with economy. So we look at Waqf as basically a form of worship. So it, as opposed to just financial sets of decisions to help certain cause. And therefore, we will see that in our sense, there is a moral limit on the profit making. So the way that we will, what we're going to support or how we are going to basically invest this money, if you're talking about cash Waqf, or what kind of things we are incentivizing, it will basically be very much related to our moral Sharia, or the aims of the Sharia, the maqasid of Sharia, is trying to build society from several different angles and protect certain key institutions, like, for example, family, a dignity of the person, and so on. And so we will truly see in this model that wealth will not just trickle down, but it will truly start to circulate and connect itself with other mechanisms in the society. So this is, I would say, on the strategic way, difference between what we are trying to build through Islamic lens framework, which is more consolidated, connected community that empowers each other and place emphasis on giving, generosity, and cooperation.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think when I think about that, I feel like it's like the glue that connects all of us over time. It builds and strengthens that connection between all the moving parts in our community, and almost like a web that brings us all together. And I think just to add to that as well, I think that the fact is the Waqf model really prioritizes capital preservation as well. The intention behind what you donate is preserved. That's the intention here. And when you have that preserved, this real benefit you're talking about, this collaborative effort around community welfare really furthers quite quickly, because you don't have usage of that wealth. You have it available to continue to invest and give back. Fantastic.
That is why, just one point on that one. That is why when we say the believers are like the block, they are something that support each other. If you look at the Lego blocks and you can just scatter them across the room, they build nothing. It needs to have certain connecting points and some cooperation to build something strong, solid, that lasts for the generations. And this is the role of these instruments like Waqf in the society.
That's well. Okay, perfect. So I might move to the next question, just conscious of time as well. So how does donating to a Waqf differ to donating to just another charity?
So usually when we think about donation, we're thinking about something that is immediate, short term. So you donate $100, there's somebody's hungry, whether it's sadaqah or charity or zakat or something like that. Even this a waqf often would have some ways where proceeds are deployed in these short-term emergency needs, relieving, somebody's hungry, there's poverty, there's issues constantly that are happening. So there is this, what we need right now, like an oxygen, versus building the body, building that tree that you were mentioning. So charity is for the immediate things. And when you talk about waqf, you are more talking about the things that build capacity for this to be sustained long term. So you're building schools, farms, your clinics, you are solving for the long term. Now we have to have a both. I will go back to the market example. Usually most of our mosques would have that market. In Bosnia, if you go to Gazi Husrev Beg Mosque, there is a market there, which Waqf rents to the people, and then they collect money from those shops in order to pay for certain things that they need, whether it's for the mosque or maintenance or imam or something like that. Now, those shops will not, if the people are poor, if they cannot afford, that those shops will not be able to pay the rent. So even when you look at how we solve global financial crisis back in the day, in 2008, government gave every household in Australia $1,000 to save job and economy from collapsing. So what is interesting is that when you have a large number of participants in the economy, and also when you bring people into economy who would otherwise not be able to participate, even though the $1,000 per head is a small amount, a number builds this circular momentum where people now start spending that money, and that feeds into economy, and that sustains those businesses, create those jobs, and incentivizes people to provide opportunities, whether the goods or services. So in reality, you need both of these things. Both of these things, immediate need feeds into the long-term needs. But what the mechanism here, what you're trying to do here, is you are trying to say, look, there are certain things in society that should be beyond just commercial-driven entities. The idea here is to solve for the more important for society. And so what we do with the issues that are beyond just monetary value, we say this is a very, very important thing. We need to solve it for the long term. I'll give you a very simple example. When I was recently in Istanbul, in Turkey, I was watching in Hagia Sophia, when you enter Hagia Sophia Mosque, you are greeted with a huge paper, which is the Waqf deed of Sultan Mehmed al-Fatih. This is the conqueror, Mehmed the Conqueror, who conquered at that time the capital of Byzantium Empire. And so this was a Constantinople and the Byzantine, and this now we call Istanbul, the city. This is a commander who was prophesied as a great leader and so on. And so when he made a waqf of the Hagia Sophia Mosque, which is a huge, it is basically institution. Inside of that waqf, there were many roles that needed to be financed. Imam who is doing Friday prayer, imams for daily prayer, reciters, teachers, people who open the mosque, people who put the lamps on, a manager who supervises, a local board of leaders and teachers who manage that. All of these roles, he dedicated certain amount of money. So for example, Imam would get paid 15 dirhams, silver coins, a day for performing these roles. Now, how did he finance this waqf? He built another Awqaf, another set of properties around it which would finance these things. So what we are trying, what is the principle here? Basically, he wanted to preserve this institution that was teaching people Islam, that was spreading the dawah, that was having very critical role in our life. So for the things that are of very big importance from the community, we need to find a way that will sustainably finance them into the future, reflecting the need and the long-term need of these kinds of projects.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think I'm going to use my investment terminology a little bit. It's like building your akhira portfolio. You have to have the real strong like return assets in there, which are waqfs. And then you have your short-term assets, which are your normal charities that are giving on the daily and doing the right things. So in a way, they both have a place to be, and they both need to be there. But it's one strategic thinking and thinking about your akhirah as well, and one is a bit more short-term, but they're both hand in hand. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's why, as you have your investment manager hat on, think about who is putting this mechanism. A general. What is the point? What generals know very well is logistics. One of the genius that he was understanding the movements of people, army, goods. When you move the army, for example, you need to bring the food, clothes, everything. There is a whole heap of things that you need in order to sustain the army. So his financial genius as a general, here he is putting the same principle that for me to have these people execute these functions in society, do these roles, we need to be able to sustain them. Otherwise, who's going to do them? Who's going to observe these things? So if something is important for the society, then society must find a way to finance it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. I might just jump to the next question, which is around what are the barriers or misconceptions that sometimes exist around establishing or supporting a waqf? What are you thinking around that?
Well, you are in the finance business. I mean, let me ask you, what do you think when people now, we don't think about Waqf as an investment like a traditional, but it is a kind of investment in your community, in your ahira and so on. So from your experience, in general, when anybody is putting money as an investment, this world centered or the next world centered, what do you think is on their mind usually? So I put you a little bit on the spot here.
Yeah, that's okay. Look, I think one of the misconceptions that I think about is, when I give my wealth into a waqf, I'm losing a sense of control over it. I want this to be maximum impact. I want to make sure that this is going to return the right amount of return that I want so that it can support the cause. I think so. One of the misconceptions that I do hear sometimes, is that, is this like an investment scheme? And that's a misconception. This is not an investment scheme. It is a mechanism by which we're using our donation and then getting that to essentially be invested and return money that is then used for the cause. So that was one of the misconceptions I have heard before.
That's great. That is important because whenever we're dealing with money, we are in a business of trust. Whether we are doing it for ourselves to gain money or to give it as a charity, we are in the business of trust. And so when you look at a waqf, what is the interesting thing? A waqf, when the Crusaders used to travel in the 12th and 13th century through the Muslim world, they were going through the Sham and they saw the Muslims doing these kinds of things. And they were very surprised. There's nothing that they come across that is very similar. So when they came back home, they developed a system which English law now we know as trust, okay? Where you have a trust as a concept, and you have then a trustee who execute on this, all right? And so in the Waqf, this kind of a trust was facilitated by transparency and the people who are from the community who were managing this, and it was very visible what they were doing because the money was collected there in the community, all kinds of money. and then it was distributed there. So I'll give you one example from the time of the Prophet ﷺ. One time the companions came to him and they kind of complained, "Oh, Prophet of Allah, these rich people, they are overtaking us," meaning they are, he was asking, "What do you mean?" He said, "They are giving a charity and on top of doing everything that we are doing, praying and all of these kinds of things." So the Prophet ﷺ told them, what you should do after every salah, recite 33 times Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, and then no one will be able to compete with you. So they started doing that. After a while, they come again and say, "Oh, Prophet of Allah, you won't believe what happens." What happened? He said, what is it? He said, "These rich people heard what we are doing and they started doing what we are doing. So what do we do now? How do we compete?" So the Prophet ﷺ said, "This is the favor Allah gives to certain people," meaning this wealth. But look at the society. How do these people see the rich in their society? They see them as somebody who is overtaking them in goodness, which go back to the hadith when Ammar was talking to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ told him, "Ammar, how beautiful and blessed is the wealth in the righteous hand, because it amplified the right thing, right idea, goodness." And so we see at that time the community was living together. There was transparency in terms of how the wealth is circulating, and they saw that these wealthy people are putting in the community. And Allah was blessing them and giving them even more, and they are the best. And they saw these people are overtaking us. And so we see that this is the blessing. But what also we see today, how people see the wealthy. When that is behind somewhere, people protest. They call them 1%ers. Usually there is an element of greed or negative emotion associated. When the global financial crisis happened, we saw Occupy Wall Street movement, because we see this as very much away from us. And so when you combine these aspects of the life in the community where wealth is circulating and the wealthy people are seen as building, contributing, empowering, then you don't have these kind of divisions. And this is what at the end builds the trust in the community, that you have a confidence in these people, you have all of these mechanisms. And so, yes, there is sometimes that issue around fear of losing control, what's going to happen, can I trust? But that only is the case if you do not know people who are trustees or who are in charge of these activities. But for people who are from the community, who are visible, people start develop more connection and trust, and they are more than happy to do it because they are seeing these beautiful results.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's why, just adding on that concept of trust, I think Awqaf Australia, when we first launched this, we did a lot of work to make sure that we put the investment into the legal structures, the effective governance structures, the strategic, how do we think about this whole Awqaf in Australia strategically? What are the elements, from an expert point of view? We've got the legal experts involved.
Absolutely. Just look at Sheikh Abdul Salam, who started it. I remember when he started it. Somebody who is just you see him, you don't need anything to think about it. You know that person, you have seen him, and you trust him, and this is why the people's first
That concept
endowment
that only
was
the
such.
elite.
Absolutely, that is why people rush to endow what they did, because he built a trust, and then you look at the team and so on. Mashallah, our CEO Muhammad and other people like Daniel and others. You see, you have a top tier group of people who are competent and trustworthy, which are the two qualities that in Quran we have when it comes to hiring people. So these are the people who should be at the top of these institutions.
Alhamdulillah. I might move to the next one question, which is, where's the future of Awqaf heading? Where do we see it going?
So look, I mean, when it comes to the future, this is a brilliant example of Awqaf Australia. Is a brilliant example. You have properties that that you see the building that does all of the traditional things from the school, from the prayer halls, from the shops that generate income and other things, and then it's building this new areas where you can invest, and people who usually would be excluded from participating because it was outside of their domain. But through these, what I could call micro Waqf donations or participation, can now become involved in building this, let's say, new way of doing certain things. Look, when you look at what are our needs, every society, every place will have different needs. You know, for example, there are beautiful models. Every day I see people present, like our Mufti, dear Mufti Taqi Usmani recently talked about using Waqf model in, for example, takaful or insurance. Scholars of the past use to say about cash Waqf, for instance, it's a good vehicle to do interest-free loans. Everybody needs. These are beautiful ways to support the community. Card loans. Microfinancing in many communities is important. You know, you have challenges in every community. You might need a media organization or research organization that perform a function in society. Even in the digital space, you might build, let's say, a crowdfunding platform that fundraise for some Waqf projects. And so there are a lot of things. In Bosnia, where I was just recently posting something where my father is caretaker of Sultan Mehmed al-Fatih Mosque, we call it Emperor Mosque, first mosque in Bosnia. They have, for example, agriculture Awqaf, Waqf, which you go there are sheep, chicken, you can buy eggs, you can buy agricultural produce, everything. And that is employing people. You have a good food, wholesome food, plus it is financing the mosque. So whatever our problems are, I think the thing is, when we cooperate, this structure is flexible. It can be adjusted to the demands of our time. The core, if you want, strength of this is that it brings people together. It brings this mahalla, this neighborhood that is running and solving its own matters. So somebody can bring, and even if you can't do the money, if you don't put the millions of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, you can put your skills, you can put your time. Any kind of contribution becomes a stake in that community towards that wealth creation. And this is what then benefits the whole ecosystem. And you know, when today you go through these waqfs, you know, and I was talking once with the head of Awqaf in Turkey. He was saying to me that, you know, in Turkey they have 20,000 Waqf properties, and 80,000 people work in those properties. They have properties that take care of stray cats and dogs. My daughter was studying in Istanbul, and she was eating every day in the kitchen of Awqaf for students, where you pay like 50 cents for a better meal than in any restaurant that you know here in Melbourne and Sydney. And so when you look at these systems that they created to support people, you see and appreciate the foresight of these people, the leadership of these people, that even today we are enjoying some of these things. So this is what we also want, this kind of a thinking to secure ourselves, to strengthen ourselves, to empower our people, build a stronger community, build that architecture that connects us and supports us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you commented on the skills as well. That's a very important point, right? Like sometimes it's not about financial strength. You could have other kind of mechanisms. And even if you don't have skills, I think the fact that you can have a conversation about awareness, that Awqaf, the revival of Awqaf in our communities, just having that conversation in a mosque or down the street with someone can be the small, you know, flame that creates the fire of real change for us in our community. You know, so I think there's so much we can do. Anyone can do, really.
Absolutely. What makes it live is the people, volunteers, skills, knowledge, assistance, service, time. you know, you can give a building as a school, but it's not going to run itself. It's not going to create a benefit. So that is just a dead piece. What makes it live is the people who participate. So they embed their action into the fabric of those buildings.
Absolutely. All right, I'm just gonna quickly move along. There's one more question, and then which kind of we've touched on throughout this whole process, but how can individuals, regardless of their financial capacity, participate or benefit the ecosystem? I think we were just speaking about this. So whether it be skill sets, whether it be just having a conversation about Awqaf, whether it be, you know, actual financial support, and I think one of the things is that organizations like Awqaf Australia are making things accessible. You don't have to now come with a multi-million-dollar property to give as a Waqf. You can come with a few $100s if you need and be part of a larger Waqf that is pooling the funds to make the same kind of impact. It's almost like, you know, yeah, that's the question. Anything additional you want to add to this one?
I was recently listening, brother Ismail Davis from NZF. He's also involved in Awqaf, and he had a very brilliant statement, which I will take from him, which I really liked. And he said, of course, he was talking about zakat, but all of these things interact. They are not in isolation. They have very big wisdom. In any case, he used the phrase which is building structured community. And I think this is what we need to think about when we are putting this work, whether financial or non-monetary. It's you are building your community capacity. So if you think about community architecture with the pillars and the walls and the glue and all supporting things that holds it together, we are in need of all of these things. We are in need of these pillars, but also connecting pieces. At the end of the day, what you are doing is there is an architecture. And within this architecture, you are putting everything that you have. You are paying zakat on your knowledge and skills, and you are putting it also as a waqf as well. And so at the end of the day, like in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, the leadership is really, when the community works together, it's about anticipating the future. What is coming, and then you are preparing for it right now. And so let me tell you in the last point is that the biggest resources that we have that utilizes all the other resources are people. So the genius and effectiveness of these institutions is actually in the people. So we can bring the money, bring together, but don't discount your time, your knowledge, your experience that you gain in other areas and how that can be very beneficial. Like, for example, when I think of Brother Daniel, he is not here, so I can speak about him like that. His knowledge of accounting, procedures, governance, these kinds of things that he built in decades, when that is deployed here, it provides huge benefit to the organization, and then it amplifies itself through the way that the community capacity grows and these property and waqf is implemented in our society. So don't discount anything. Whatever you can give, whatever you can sacrifice, put it there, and we are building community. We are putting our stake, embedding ourselves in these in our community.
Amazing. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for that. I'm going to quickly run through a couple more slides, and then we'll open up to inshallah questions. So the question was, you know, we've just talked about all this, but how does Awqaf Australia come into this whole picture? So there's 4 ways that you can access waqfs today. Whether you be here in Sydney, Australia, Melbourne, any of the Australian states, or overseas. We actually allow access to anyone. The first is the general waqfs, or there's 15 of them. So they're essentially what I was talking about. You can pool your funds together.
Is it me, or are we
Well,
losing you, Brother Ammar, a little bit?
The third is, oh, sorry, did I break up?
There was a bit of a, I don't know, breaking in the, if you, I don't know if I didn't hear you. So maybe if you want to repeat that again.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, so the second one was around personalized Waqf. So a family or a business can set up a Waqf where they can essentially choose a few different charitable causes. And essentially, you can then advertise your own Waqf to then anyone who gives into that Waqf, the amount gets invested and then used for those purposes that you want to collectively put into the family Waqf. So that's number two. Number three is gifting an asset. So if you're someone who's a business or or an individual who is wealthy and has a lot of assets and wants to put one towards a charitable purpose as a Waqf, we can help you administer that. So you can gift that in to the Awqaf ecosystem. And number four is in your leave a bequest. So in your will, the wasiya component, the 1/3, we encourage everyone, a portion of that should be put towards a Waqf, a sadaqa jariyah that lives beyond you. So these are four mechanisms that we enable Waqfs to be accessible for anyone. And here's just two examples. And you can see Brother Almir as well in this one video that's playing. So these are grants on the other end. So now that the money has been put in, what happens when they made returns? Where did they go? So there's one here on the left here, which is you're talking to Brother Dean and Brothers in Need there, Brother Elmir. And so what we did was we gave them 2 vans. Oh, you're saying something, I think.
No. Do you want to share the screen, or is it going to be on the screen something, or?
Oh, I'm not sure. Is it playing? Can you see that moving on my screen?
I don't see it. It's not shared.
Wow.
I
Sorry.
can see it
Give me one
fine.
second.
Oh, maybe it's mine.
Let me just share the screen as well. Just one second. So yeah, as it's coming up, so we've done 2 grants. One is assisting the homeless in Melbourne through the Brothers in Need charity. And essentially, even when we think about our grants on the other end, we really focus on what makes the most impact. We can give, consumable grants, which essentially is used for the purposes, which is still okay. But in this case, we said, you know what, we're going to work on getting a van for them that has continual benefits, almost like the concept of Waqf continues even in our grant process. And the second project on the right is with the House of Sadaqa. And so that is called the Goodwill Charity or the Laundromat. And essentially, the idea there is we help them purchase the actual equipment. So again, similar to the concept of Waqf, we're building real infrastructure in our community. It continues to kind of outlive the just one-off investment, one-off use. So now that you've heard a bit more about what Awqaf Australia does and the grants that we give, I just thought I'll give you a high-level view of the team as well. And so on this page is the Board of Trustees. And so the Board of Trustees has Sheikh Abdul Salam Zaud, who's the Waqf supervisor on Awqaf Australia. So he helps govern the Waqf requirements. And you can, as Brother Elmir said, there's some exceptional people on this board that are just, I can't even say words to describe. They're deep experts in what they do, and they bring a lot of real knowledge and real expertise to the organization. Now, we also have the executive team, who are, again, very deep experts in each of their different fields, and very corporate-minded, very professional brothers and sisters who've helped make this real. And so, alhamdulillah, I'm have the pleasure of being part of that group. And lastly, I'll also introduce the investment committee. So Brother Elmir is also part of that committee. So we are working with the investment partners in the back end to make sure that the returns are Sharia compliant, firstly, and making sure that the returns are appropriate so that we can continue to give out grants over time. Now, I also mentioned investment partners, so just high level, we've got 3 big investment partners we work with. So Koda Capital is a massive investment partner that does about $3.3 billion worth of not-for-profit investments across the globe. So working with them So if any of the information that you heard today was useful and you want to be part of the Awqaf Australia journey, you want to have a conversation with us, etc., about these things, I would recommend you definitely scan that. And with that, I might just quickly open up the questions. Are there any questions that I'm learning or I haven't answered?
Sorry, Ammar. I think it's the last slide with the partners. For some reason, that cut off. I couldn't hear what you were saying. I'm not sure if you could kindly go back to that.
Yeah,
Just repeat. Yep, thank you.
no worries.
Ammar, do you want to just share how we selected the investment partners and their role, please?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we went through a process of going for a request for proposal to about 38 different investment partners globally. So it wasn't just a quick decision. It went through a long process. They all had to kind of put the name in the hat in the bucket, and we went through a long, stringent process of assessing a lot of different partners. And finally, from that 38 different partners globally, we came down to these three that we felt were the best aligned to give a multi-asset, multi-manager strategy, looking across fixed income, Sukuks, commodities, equities globally, and real estate as well. And so this was the kind of the best mix we found at the end after going through that process.
I was just going to say, first of all, it's nice to meet everyone. My name is Mohammed Zah, the CEO. We have the chair of Awqaf Australia here as well, Brother Daniel Viserik. And if you don't mind, I might ask you a question around, in your experience, what's happening specifically in Australia with regards to transfer of capital from generation to generation? Like, there is a massive baby boomer, basically once in a generation experience. How are you seeing that and the role of that in the transfer of capital to Waqf systems?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Can everyone hear me? I hope.
You can.
Yep.
Yep, you can. Brilliant. Jazakallah khair. Almir Colan previously for some kind words. I was online listening to this. It's great when we get the opportunity to share important knowledge and particularly educate our community. I think there are a couple of issues that are really shaping the future of charity and the social impact in our community. One of them clearly is, and I believe we're on a cusp of this once in a generation phenomenon, and that is this intergenerational wealth transfer that is essentially just on the cusp is happening. Now, it's on the back of soaring house prices and raw material demand and so forth. But there was a report commission that suggests that $5.4 trillion is going to be part of this wealth intergenerational transfer that's going to occur over the next 20 years. Now, if we take the population of the Muslims, call it circa 3.2%, we're suggesting that the community would hold somewhere approximately $170 billion of that entire value. So it's important, and I think we're fortunate that our Awqaf's going to be in that position, inshallah, to play that critical vehicle in future funding for our community, that inshallah we can actually inherit and manage a meaningful share of that wealth, so that we can ensure, inshallah, that is preserved, invested wisely, and then deployed for long-term benefit, because I see ourselves as that future fund. And I suppose the other thing, Mohammed, as well, is just really how we rethink funding priorities. Whilst a lot goes to emergency relief, and that's really extremely important, but it leaves those long-term priorities that we spoke about education, welfare, and community resilience extremely underfunded. And as a granting organization in the future, inshallah, we'll have that unique ability to redirect some of those funds to those critical areas. So I think just these two elements together are really going to give us this rare chance to shape a legacy, inshallah, and transcending generations. That inshallah will ensure, that we actually have strategy and long-term impact rather than that sort of reactive short-term relief, which is important, but can't be the only focus at this point in time.
Exactly. Okay. It's a very important fact, I think. Okay. I just have, I know we're at time. We do have just quickly 2-3 questions. I might just rapidly try to address them. One was, is the cash Waqf treated as zakat contribution? That's not the case because we're investing it, so we can't, it's not zakat. Another one that came through was, in a cash Waqf, since the money is invested, investments have risk associated, how do you ensure capital preservation? So our investment strategy is based on absolute returns. So we are positioned in a way that we're not taking a lot of risk up front. We're putting a lot of risk-averse strategies, ensuring that the capital growth takes place before we move into more riskier strategies. So that's how we're managing that, and we'll also have a diversified portfolio. And then the last one, just quickly, how is the governance of collective Waqfs surfaced or socialized with the contributors of such Waqfs? So there are 2 groups. So there's the general Waqfs, which is the collective Waqfs essentially. So we will be putting performance reports on how they're performing, what's the grants available for those. And also if you have a family Waqf, we do the same thing. So we'll give you how much is available to be put towards the causes in a portal that we set up when you set up your family Waqf. So hopefully that answers some of the key questions. And inshallah, just feel free to reach out to Awqaf Australia. We're happy to answer more questions and keep talking through. But I just wanted to say a very warm thank you to Brother Almir Colan for joining us and sharing his wisdom on all things Islamic wealth and Waqf.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to be with you and to see some of these beautiful faces.
Alhamdulillah. All right, may Allah bless you all, and inshallah we'll end it there. And you've got our details, inshallah, reach out. Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.